I came across a video of you on YouTube where you're dancing to the song, Are We Humans or Are We Dancer? So which is it?
Maybe we are human and I hope we dance through humanity. How's that? I don't know what it is about that song. There's something freeing about that song. I love it. Every time I hear it, if you were to play it, I would be dancing right now.
Hey, does anyone have that song that they can just play from
No,
their
no,
phone
no.
really quickly?
No. We'll do that at the end as a closeout. How's that?
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Talking to Earthlings with Lunakye, where we explore the humanism within all of us. Today we welcome activist, actress, and most prominently, the president of SAG-AFTRA, Gabrielle Carteris. She is known for her role as Andrea on Beverly Hills 90210, and her extensive resume includes a recurring role on Code Black and guest starring roles on Criminal Minds. But the role she loves the most is being a mother. Gabrielle, how are you?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. It's so good to see you.
So good to see you. So good to see people. I honest to God did not realize how much I miss people until I started being able to get out a little bit more. I'm like, oh, right. The sun is shining. People are outside. This is good. Yeah.
You know, I'm 32 now, and I thought I was totally over the clubbing scene. But then as soon as the club was pulled away from me, I was like, I kind of want to go out dancing.
I think this has been the hardest time particularly for young people. Like my girls, you know, my daughter is 27, my other one is 22. When you're young, you're really social. Everything about your identity is wrapped up in your social kind of life, right? And I think it's been really a challenge for young people to have that taken away for this period of time. That's what I'm noticing. So.
Yeah. Well, I would say, except for Crystal over here, who is very much a homebody, the rest of our millennial crew here would agree.
Yeah. It's hard. I just want to be able to hang out just with friends a little bit or whatever to go up. But really that idea of just getting out, I mean, it's all that energy, right? And you're just kind of, it's nice to be able to be together. The idea that you're able to shoot together and be together is great. I mean,
Totally.
I love being back on a set, that whole thing, being with the crew and being with the direct, I don't know, just that kind of, that energy of being with human beings in a room is very different than the Zooms that I've been doing from morning till night for a year.
Totally.
Yeah, totally different.
Take us back in time to the very beginning of your acting career.
When I lived in New York, I was actually just graduated from Sarah Lawrence College, and I wanted to be an actor, right, going out in the world. And it's so different when I think about it, but then I would do anything and everything. I was a part of actually an improv group I had auditioned for, and I was doing improv, and I tried to find jobs that would allow me the freedom to act, right, and audition, because I had to be able to pay for my rent, and I wanted to be able to act. And then I did almost anything. I did a lot of theater. I don't know if we talked about this before, but I had actually was in a play. I was so excited. It was, like an hour and a half. Behind a rock, I had to sit like this for the entire play because there was no break. And I'd come up just for one line. Swear to God, one line. And so for me, that was the most exciting thing, just to know I was doing theater and whatever. But that's when I started. And it was hard when I started. It was it was an industry that was all about looks, which it is anyway. But then It was, I used to say it's about blonde, booby girls. That was the whole thing. That's what they wanted from, and I didn't look like that.
Right.
And I was told often at that time that I wasn't pretty enough to be an actor, and that, it would always be kind of second best and you shouldn't do it. And anyway, I continued on, and I auditioned, and I did a lot of commercials in the beginning, which was great. I was able to buy my apartment in New York. The commercials were a lot of money at that time, the way they were being done. It was only union at the time, really. And you had to be in the union in order to work.
Right.
What's great, of course, is because it really is a sign of professionalism, and there's so much protection, which I only grew to really appreciate years later when I was injured, that I realized, oh my God, thank God, I have a union. It's more than just a card that I hold. It's a support system, and that was really great for me. But starting off was a very different, when you're young, I didn't care about the money so much. as I got older and that became more of the way I worked, it was really important that I was able to support myself. But in the beginning, as actors, we would do anything.
Totally.
Right? Anything you could.
I think Meryl Streep has a similar story or experience facing adversity as a woman and persevering and going on to become Meryl Streep.
I bet that you would have a story from everybody anybody who's had a long career of any kind, I think would have a lot of stories to share. Whether it was discriminatory, whether it was being misunderstood, or being put in a position that was compromising. It's a very hyper-exposed work. I mean, everything that we do in this business is so vulnerable. I'm sure the stories are you could do a book on the stories I've lived, right?
Yeah. So I read that early on in your career, you were involved in some controversial shows that were part of the after-school specials. Mm-hmm. One, I believe, was about a gay kid. And
it's called What If I'm Gay?
Oh, What If I'm Gay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then another one was about rape. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So even early on, you were taking on heavy subject matter.
I think that most storytelling has heavy, right? Unless it's a comedy, everything has something. They were meaningful stories, right? That's what they were. I think there's a lot of heavy material out there, but these were real. In that time, to be able to talk about young people who were gay, which was not something that was being talked about, right? I mean, this is the idea that we have an LGBTQ and that we talk about inclusion and and equity for all, that everybody, we never talked about that. It wasn't a they and them, and you know what I mean. You didn't look at people being when they talked about somebody being gay, it was always about adults. But there's it was freeing to do stories that really were relevant to young people that weren't being told, right? To be able to tell the stories that people kind of hid is always an exciting thing to do. So it was great. It was a job then, but I loved being able to work with the people I worked with. I loved the message that came out. I think everything has potential to have something, meaningful done if it's a good story.
Yeah. So would you say that around that time was the beginning of the evolution of our progressive movement?
I think that I came into the industry when there was a shift beginning to take place, right? So even when you think about 90210, what made it a success at that time was that it was dealing with real issues instead of, candy coating it. Prior to 90210, a lot of the family stories that you saw or stories of young people were very cookies and milk, right? It was very stereotypical, and kids were just, immature. They had a place. When we did 90210, it was young people have a voice. They're human beings too, right? They have concerns and issues and desires, and they need to talk about those things. And there was the conversations that were being had on our show, or the work that I was doing at that time. It wasn't evolutionary times. People started wanting to not be told what to look like, but wanted to see themselves. It was the transition of where we are finally to today, where we really, the most successful of our things in our industry are really due to the fact that people are able to see themselves for the first time being represented, their stories are being told, and it's more meaningful. But yes, I think that was the beginning. It was very formulaic, right? And then they started to break the formula.
Yeah. So prior to that shift, was it mainstream and normalized to where it wasn't even conceptualized within society?
No, I think society doesn't have to conceptualize something for it to exist, right? I think society wasn't talking about it. What was happening during that time was what was going on in the world. It was very selective and controlled, the messaging that went out. And I think there started to become a real transition where people said, I don't want it to be so controlled. I don't want to be denied the realities of what's taking place, right? I don't want you to paint my picture. I want my picture to be painted through my experiences. And I think that you started to see the success of the industry. You go through fads, I guess, but it started to be breaking away from tradition, was where you saw that evolution, breaking away, until now you come to a time when television in so many ways doesn't reflect what it was then. I mean, it is so different than what it was, and the stories that are being told, because there was traditionally only 3 networks and then 4, So what happened was a lot of everything that we thought about or saw came through just those lenses, right? Those were the lenses that told the story. Now, because of all the different platforms that are out there and streaming and how things are going, we're not looking to have billions of eyes in one place. It's really more specific to a certain kind of audience instead of making everybody the audience. So the stories that are told can be very specific and very different as a result of that, right? Because everybody has different tastes, and there's more willingness to be open to different stories, and people do want to see themselves. They want to see themselves up there. So as a result, we're very diverse as a society. Our stories are much more interesting, much more complicated, right? Much more reflective of what's going on.
In 2017, you gave a TED Talk that was disturbing, but also empowering. In it, you spoke about problems with actors and safety issues on set. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, yes. So that was my story. You're right. I did this TED Talk, and it was about, it wasn't just about, it was actually about unionism. That was really what I did to create that TED Talk. It started off with my story of, it was about, now, gosh, I can't believe it, in '07. About 12 years ago, I was partially paralyzed shooting a film. I was in a fight scene. And where I had been working every day for my whole adult life, suddenly I was injured to the point where I had a movement disorder. I was very deformed. So I was at UCLA for a couple of years getting treatment, and I had to stop working. And I tell the story about what happened, and it was like ground shaking for me. It really just changed my life. It was that unexpected moment. But it was due to that time that at that time I was invited to come to be in a meeting at the union. And I didn't know that members at all were involved with union. I really thought the union was a building with lawyers making contracts. I had no idea that we had members who were on a board, we had members who were president. I didn't know any of that. But anyway, I sat in on a meeting, and I, started to engage and do the work. And so the story in my TED Talk is about, through my service, that I started to see that my story and my life and my work I did is not unlike other people. The challenges that we all face, it might be in different degrees, but we all share a lot of the same stories at different times. And so it became part of my service and building and wanting to be able to help merge the unions with like-minded people who didn't want to have two unions defining us. We wanted one union so that we can go into negotiations and not be divided in our negotiations. We wanted to have the leverage, thank God, because now we see this is, if I were to say, looking back now and where we are, particularly after a pandemic, thank God we have one union, because the fights and the things that we have to fight for to help protect members, we could not have done that divided. We had to come together. So that it's clear to me that merging was imperative at that time. But my TED Talk really was about also just why it's so important to have a union, that as individuals, it's really hard to fight the system if something goes wrong. Who speaks up for you? To feel alone, most of the work is done, when you talk about studios, these are major corporations, and one voice could be shut down, but the collective, the idea that we could all, together we rise, all ships rise together, right? And so that was my talk about what I really started to recognize in terms of why we need to have a collective voice and why it's so important for us to be able to stand together. It helps us have stronger contracts. And I was able to talk about it and talked about, age discrimination in our industry and, fighting that fight because, IMDb still puts our ages up there. God knows why they have to do it. It's a hiring site, but all these fights. But in the end, my realization, and that's, I think, the culmination of this, is that we're not meant to be alone, and that we are meant to take care of each other, and that to remember our country was built actually on the working people. It wasn't, people think of our industry, right? You're either a star, they think, or you haven't made it. They don't realize in the whole in between is all the journeyman actors, right? All of us who are working day in and day out. Some people you might recognize if you see them, but you might not really know them. That these stories are being told by many different people, right? They're not all stars. They're workers who are actors, who are trying to make a living and and enjoy their craft, but they want to do it with respect and dignity, and we're all the same, right? And so that's really the culmination of the whole TED Talk. It was very interesting to do that in 2017, and I don't know what my TED Talk, if I were to do one now, you know what I mean, what it would be, but it was really liberating for me to tell the story of what happened and to really know that we can stand together and make a difference.
I want to go off script here, but one thing that I've noticed throughout this series is I think I told you, that it sometimes gets too long. Like
You do whatever you need.
Like I wanted to ask you, because I wanted to say, I guess I'm just going to say it anyways. But also, it's organic, so, it's all good. But I was going to say, what was once perceived as a tragedy really wasn't a tragedy, because
It opened a door.
And you said in your TED Talk that it was in that moment that you became very outspoken.
It changed my whole life. Well, and so if you want, I can talk about, that's one of the things I think is I found my voice. When I lost my ability to really work at that time, and I started the fight to, because I wasn't being protected by the people who were my employers. All I wanted was my medical taken care of, and they lied. And they lied about what happened, and so then I said, oh, you see, that's not okay. I was there to, I know things that can happen, but you didn't protect me, and now you're not protecting me beyond that. Like, you're literally lying about what happened. So that's when I hired a lawyer, and I went after them, and I was very lucky. My case actually helped to change laws in Canada. And I heard about that from the studios too. Gabrielle, you've caused havoc with us. Well, you know what? I deserve to be protected. But I in that moment when I really was working on the TED Talk, because it's not something that just comes out of your mouth. You got to really work on that, right? The story. I realized where I had always wanted to be, and I think as actors, this is something I learned. We don't want to rock the boat, right? I'm hoping that I got this job, that I do great in this job, and that you're going to want me again, because we're always looking for the next job, right? It's just what it is. And so somehow I thought, speaking out was like rocking the boat. And I realized I need to rock the boat. I can rock the boat and still work. You have to be able to speak up for yourself and find that's also what union can do for you, because it's very hard to be that person who's really out there speaking up if nobody's there to support you through it. They were saying to me, basically, you're nothing, you're one voice. And we're a corporation, and we have what it takes to beat you down. And they did. They went and they shared all my personal information on the internet. The judge, the courts went and forced them to take it down and got a fine for it. They were continuously like at me in my personal life so that I would not follow through. And I really did learn that I can have my voice and still work. And not everybody's going to like it, but if I do it respectfully, because that's really what it is, right? If people will either embrace it, like-minded people, or they won't. But it did teach me, and I learned, and I always try to say to people, speak your truth. You can find a way, and if you can't, we'll help you. We will help you do what might feel too painful to do on your own. And I think that is an incredible gift.
So speaking of, and this is to quote you, you said the union gives voice to individuals and the collective and raises us up. Mm-hmm. What are the issues that are most near and dear to your heart that you have worked to change?
I think the issues that are near and dear to my heart are actually the issues that are near and dear to many of our hearts. It's been almost 5.5 years that I've been in this role as president. When I first came in, I went and set my agenda. I shared this publicly. One of the things that I shared, was negotiating strong contracts, clearly wanting to organize, really communicating and finding ways to communicate and be with the members and hear what they need to say and what they want and what their concerns are, but also working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I said it then, and it has actually probably been one of the major things that I've really worked on throughout these 5.5 years, and the need for that, and that recognition from others that the time is now, that we really, unions are always often create a very equal playing field, right? Our contracts are genderless, men and women get the same contract. It's the base living, so nobody can ever get less than. But there are things that lack equity beyond the contract when women are being paid less than men, when we're seeing people of color are being paid less than people who are, white. And we're seeing people who, whether they have disabilities, that they're not being treated with the same type of respect, or they're not being acknowledged for what the challenges they're being faced with and given opportunities to have access, right? These are the things that I see this across the board. So now more than ever, it is in the conversation of our country. And actually, on a global level, it's in a conversation because I'm a part of FIA, which is actually the Federation of International Artists. It's unions all over the world for actors. This conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion is happening across the world. And I am literally in conversations about how do we establish to make sure that everybody has at least certain protections and rights. So those things are the things that I work on, and I really am working on. One of the things that has become a major focus for me is technology, because I think technology is, and we are right in the midst of it, experiencing it during the pandemic. Just streaming alone, and how people have been tied to their homes and to watching television differently than they ever have before. The technology that's coming on with, we thought with the avatars and the, IA, and now there's the whole volumetric system going on where I just did a thing where they recorded me and I played 2 roles. They were able to do it without a green screen, and they didn't have to do it with any of the, connectors. Literally, I was just standing in this volumetric room and doing a 360, and they were able to reproduce me. I mean, so I'm really focused on the technology and how it's going to affect our work, because the future is going to change. The future is here in a lot of ways, but there's a lot coming up, and we have to educate our members. We have to be at the table with the developers so they can understand what serves us and what hurts us. And so those have been my focal points, and just really, trying to make sure that we are being nimble, not traditionalists necessarily. I've been really focused on what do our young members really, how do we make ourselves relevant? We have the contracts that we're developing. We created a whole thing for influencers so they can come and join. Some of our members are influencers, but we didn't have jurisdiction in that place. So we created a contract that allowed influencers to be a part of the union, because influencers are really the new, or what's really going on for entertainment, right? Young people are multi-hyphenate. They're not just one thing anymore. When I started in the business, an actor was an actor. Very rarely did they cross over into, directing or writing, or, you had some people doing it. Now, young people, they're doing it all, right? So that's really a lot of the focus I've been working on too. How do we go and make ourselves relevant, make it easy so that young people really want to, I know they want to be a part of our union, but it was too complicated. It was too hard, and they want ease. They want it right now. So we're really adapting a lot of the stuff to really answer the needs of the members who are self-creators and storytellers. So those are the things that I've been working on, and fighting the sexual stuff that's, this is the Harvey Weinstein moment was a really interesting moment for me, because some of my personal experiences I thought were only mine, and that I just had to suck it up and figure out how to work through it. Hearing these stories and hearing stories from men and women constantly, and really where they were not sharing these stories, that's been a really big thing. Why we changed language in our contracts, why I became part of these different organizations that actually really help us to define and fight the sexual assault and the risks that take place, I think, just in our work. So these are the fights that we've been having, and the things that I'm very passionate about, because I think that it makes a difference in the lives of, performers, and I want them to feel that they have a voice, that they're seen.
I love your tenacity and your passion for the fight.
Really amazing honor to be able to be there fighting along with the members to be able to get what they need. It is really an honor.
So this is the last and most important question that I have for you as it relates to the Talking to Earthlings series.
Okay.
What does it mean to be human?
What does it mean to be human? I think that it means that and we spoke about this, that we are, so much of who we are is so similar. We share so many of the same things. To be human is to be able to be similar and to also celebrate the fact that we're not similar, that we're different. And I think to be really healthy human, to be really encompassing of humanity, is to invite all of our conversations, all of us to be together, and to not only surround ourselves with people who are like us, but to actually invite people who aren't and to learn about that, because that's the totality of our humanity. And it's the idea that I think that we're richer and better. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, right? Our humanity is not meant to only be comfortable. Our humanity is meant to be curious, and it to be ideally open. And this is the most corny thing, and I'm sorry, but I really believe this. I think our humanity is to be love. I think that in the end, I think that our truest humanity is when we really connect with each other in an open way, knowing that we're not going to always agree, but all of that informs us to be better, and that we actually come to better decisions when we have the full conversation. That doesn't mean, though, in our differences that we should be cruel to each other. I think that that actually stops us from being really fully human. That I think that if people can let go of some of that stuff and just really share ideas and, you know, and question, and but we are more alike than we are different. And those differences that we have, we should celebrate. I think that they make and define us in a way that we can never truly understand unless we really embrace it. That's how I feel.
Well, Gabrielle Carteris, I have to let you know, I have been literally ecstatic since hearing that you were coming onto the series. And I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here and, you know, sharing your experience, sharing your passions, and just for your beautiful authenticity.
You're so I have to say, I think it's wonderful that you are pursuing your dream and that you're so passionate yourself. It's really, I only wish good things for you.
Thank you. Do you have anything that you would like to share with our audience?
Personally, I just finished shooting a small part in a film that is called Boone. It was really a great experience. Thank you for the experience. I would say this, please, we can make this world and country a better place if we all participate in healing. And we need to stand together right now in a time that's been really crushing. And we need to blossom into something new and better. And not to say, let us go back to normal, because normal was not working. And this has been an incredible opportunity. I hope we all take it together.
Once again, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. What's up?
I don't know the lyrics.
The form of surrender. It's coming up soon. So I'll show you.
Interpretive dance.
Sometimes I get nervous. See, this is the part I love. Close your eyes, see your heart. Touch this chord. Are we human?
Or are we dancer?
My side is vital. My hands are cold.
And I'm on my knees looking for the answers.
Yes, that's true. Are we human? Are we human, baby?
Or are we dog? Hey guys, thanks for watching that episode. As a reminder, we've created Talking to Earthlings to have raw and honest conversation with one another in an effort to unite human beings who may not agree ideologically, but who can be inspired by one another's vulnerabilities. By watching our show, you are helping us accomplish our goal of changing the world, one conversation at a time. Make sure to follow us on socials to stay updated. Thanks.